Two children play a lively game of make-believe, with the girl acting as a monster and the boy as a mage. The boy grips his wooden stick tightly, preparing to strike his opponent. He swings the stick down, accidentally hitting the girl squarely on the forehead. While the boy laughs in triumph, the girl shouts in protest at the painful and unfair blow. Their squabble is interrupted by the arrival of an elderly man with a long white beard. The old man, accompanied by a younger couple, greets the children with a gentle smile. The children pause their game, looking up at the strangers with wide, curious eyes. A vision of a majestic hooded figure radiating a golden holy light appears. The younger man accompanying the elder offers a polite but slightly nervous smile. The old man glances back over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. The younger man gestures towards the elder, seemingly introducing him to the family. The old man stands silent, his presence commanding attention as he observes. Suddenly, an image of a terrifying dark beast wreathed in purple energy manifests. The woman quickly pulls the little girl into a tight, protective embrace. Her face is filled with anxiety and fear as she watches the situation unfold. A hand rests gently on the head of a young person. An older hand reaches out to grasp a wooden staff. A man watches the interaction with a look of nervous concern. An elderly man with a white beard stares forward with a serious expression. The scene shifts to a peaceful village nestled among green mountains. A small white rabbit rests quietly in the tall grass. Turan, a shepherd, lies asleep in the field surrounded by his sheep and dog. He naps deeply with a blade of grass hanging from his mouth. The sheep graze and bleat softly around their sleeping guardian. The flock wanders peacefully across the lush open pasture. A quiet barn stands alone in the countryside setting. Turan remains relaxed on the ground, arms folded behind his head. Suddenly, he opens one eye, sensing a presence nearby. The old man stands over him, scolding the shepherd for slacking off. He looks down sternly, waiting for the young man to explain his laziness. A silver-haired young man lies motionless on the ground with a piece of straw in his mouth. An elderly man looks down at the scene, plotting to quietly claim the sheep as common property. The young man remains slumped against the side of a large grazing sheep, appearing lifeless. The old man gasps in sudden shock as the body before him stirs. One eye snaps open, revealing a sharp and intense gaze that betrays no sign of sleep. The young man stands up and casually dusts off his clothes, leaving the elder stunned by his sudden recovery. He gently places a hand on the head of the white sheep, which continues to chew its grass. A warm, friendly smile appears on his face as he pets the animal. He crouches down beside the sheep again, turning his back to the confused elder. The old man watches in silence, puzzled by the stranger's behavior. The young man keeps his attention on the animal, his posture relaxed. A confident smirk forms on his lips as he speaks. The old man turns around and walks away across the grassy field. The young man stays behind with the flock, seemingly possessing a mysterious and magical aura. As he glances back, his friendly expression shifts into a cold, calculating stare. The story introduces a world of mysterious power and magic as a sheep grazes peacefully. A traveler with bandaged legs walks steadily across the grassy field. The white-haired young man strolls through the flock, pondering a strong probability in his mind. He smiles faintly, appearing relaxed and lost in thought. Suddenly he sniffs the air, catching a distinct scent carried by the wind. His eye widens and his gaze sharpens as he realizes something is wrong. The peaceful atmosphere vanishes as he turns to look back with a serious expression. The wind rustles through the trees of a nearby forest as the sun begins to set. He leaves the grass and steps onto the dirt path, moving with purpose. Entering the woods, he scans his surroundings, now certain of his instincts. A grim look crosses his face as he nears his destination. He comes to a sudden halt, planting his feet firmly on the ground. He stares ahead, his expression turning cold and intense. The young man looks down to find a bloody massacre, recognizing a victim named Rabus. He stands silently over the carnage, his eyes filled with a solemn intensity. The young man pauses, deep in thought, as he analyzes the situation. Based on the bloody evidence before him, he concludes that a monster must be responsible. A sudden presence interrupts his thoughts, catching him by surprise. A massive armored foot steps heavily onto the ground, glowing with ominous light. The beast fully emerges from the darkness, growling with a terrifying aura. The young man turns around to face the colossal creature looming behind him. The encounter triggers a memory of a young boy sitting expectantly at a dining table. A father figure approaches the boy, serving a warm meal with a kind demeanor. He places a plate of pancakes gently on the table for the child. The man stands beside the boy, creating a moment of warmth and domestic peace. The child looks up at his guardian with eyes full of innocence and trust. The man returns the gaze with a gentle, loving smile. The warm memory is shattered as the monster roars violently in the present, its eyes burning with rage. Unfazed by the terrifying display, the young man looks back at the beast with a calm expression. A knowing smile curls on his lips, as if he recognizes the person within the monster. A sudden disturbance shakes the quiet forest, startling the figure standing among the trees. A massive beast emerges from the shadows, growling deeply as it reveals its terrifying fangs. The young man stands his ground, his body enveloped in a powerful radiating energy as he prepares for battle. Despite the danger, he looks completely bored, casually scratching his cheek while facing the monster. The creature lunges forward with explosive speed, aiming to crush its prey in a single strike. He watches the attack descend, remaining perfectly still as the massive shadow falls over him. With a sharp shout, he unleashes his power to counter the beast's momentum. The monster's claws tear through the air, but the man effortlessly weaves through the attack. A confident smirk crosses his face as he taunts the creature for its inability to land a hit. The beast is struck by a blindingly fast counterattack that rattles its entire body. The force of the blow sends the massive creature crashing violently into the ground. The monster shakes off the impact, its eyes glowing with fury as it glares back at its opponent. The fighter lands gracefully, keeping his distance while the beast crouches, ready to spring again. He lets out a sigh of disappointment, looking at the creature with an expression of utter disinterest. To vent his boredom, he effortlessly crushes a stone into dust within his grip. The agile fighter leaps through the air, maneuvering with a confident grin. A massive rocky beast charges forward, thundering across the ground to crush him. He grips a stone tightly in his hand, applying enough pressure to crack its surface. Drawing his arm back, he prepares to unleash the rock with immense force. His eyes flash with a golden light as he locks onto his target with heightened perception. With a powerful swing, he hurls the projectile forward at incredible speed. He skids to a sudden stop, his feet digging into the dirt to brace against the momentum. He looks up, sharply tracking the trajectory of his attack. The projectile strikes the beast mid-charge, creating a violent impact. The creature is thrown off balance, reeling from the force of the blow. A streak of blue energy pierces through the scene, exploding upon contact. The ground shatters from the intensity of the attack, sending debris flying. The monster roars and looms over the small figure, jaws wide open to strike. Unfazed by the beast's fury, the fighter simply offers a smug, fearless smile. The massive creature collapses, plummeting heavily into the earth below. A devastating attack strikes with precision, aiming directly for the enemy's head. The impact is instantaneous and overwhelming, shattering the target in a burst of energy. As the dust settles, the warrior stands still, observing the aftermath of his strike. Looking down at the massive carcass, he notes that this is the first time he has used this technique on a living monster. The creature lies completely destroyed, its body mangled by the sheer force of the blow. As he catches his breath, his mind begins to drift away from the battlefield. His memory travels back to a specific moment from 8 years ago. In the past, a young boy sits on the floor, using telekinesis to make furniture and tools float around the room. He smiles with innocent delight, clearly enjoying his magical control over the objects. Unaware of his surroundings, he does not notice a woman entering the room behind him. The floating items hang suspended in the air as the woman stands in the doorway, witnessing the scene. Her expression turns to one of pure shock and fear as she realizes what the child is doing. She quickly reaches out and grabs a piece of floating wood, interrupting the magic. As the other objects drop to the floor, she kneels down to face the child with a look of deep concern. The boy looks back at her, confused and unsure why his display of power has caused such a reaction. A walking stick and firewood lie scattered across the wooden floorboards. The woman stands before the young boy, looking down at him with a gentle expression. The white-haired boy looks up, listening intently to what she has to say. His eyes widen slightly as he absorbs the weight of her story. She speaks of a legend where radiant beings descended from the heavens to save ancient humanity. With the story finished, she reaches down to retrieve her cane from the floor. She turns away from the boy, preparing to leave the room. The boy remains still, sensing the significance of the figure looming over his destiny. He watches her go, his young face marked by a serious realization. Before departing completely, the woman turns back to offer him one last reassuring smile. Now alone in the rustic room, the boy stands still and faces the large window. He reaches out a hand to gently pull back the curtain. Pressing close to the glass, he gazes out with a stoic expression. The house remains quiet as he observes the outside world from within. Suddenly, The peace is shattered by a violent pounding on the door and a command to come out. A silver-haired young man leans casually against a wooden pillar, appearing calm and detached. A group of angry villagers confronts him, led by a large hostile man who glares at him. Showing complete disinterest in their aggression, the young man lets out a long, bored yawn. He turns his back on the group and begins to walk away, ignoring them entirely. Suddenly, the large man grabs him roughly by the collar to stop him from leaving. The man screams furiously, accusing the youth of throwing someone to the monsters to be eaten. The attacker tightens his grip on the young man's collar, holding him in place. Behind the leader, the other men watch the confrontation with grim, serious expressions. The large man's eye widens in shock as he notices a sudden shift in the atmosphere. Instead of fear, the young man looks back with a confident, mocking smile. Enraged by this reaction, the attacker screams and throws a heavy punch. Moments later, the young man stands unharmed, dusting off his hands over the unconscious bodies of the entire group. He then walks up to a building where a tall, bearded man is waiting in the doorway. Changing his demeanor instantly, the young man looks up with an innocent, pitiful expression. The scene concludes with a view of the tall wooden house standing under the bright sky. A hearty meal of soup, bread, and cured meats is spread across the wooden table. The older man eats with intense hunger, stuffing large pieces of bread into his mouth. Across from him, the silver-haired young man eats calmly, watching his companion's voracious appetite. The bearded man pauses to wash down his food with a long swig from a large mug. The young man follows suit, tilting his head back to drink from his own cup. He lowers the mug, a quiet and attentive look on his face. The older man speaks up, mentioning the importance of good manners in the quiet room. The conversation turns somber as he recalls a woman who passed away from an illness years ago, leaving an empty bed behind. He closes his eyes and touches his forehead, making a solemn gesture of respect for the dead. The young man stands up from his chair and walks over to the fireplace. Holding a piece of dried meat, the older man continues his story with a relaxed demeanor. The young man turns his back to the table, facing the shelves stocked with supplies. He peers into the shadowed storage space, looking for something specific. The older man watches him from the table, confirming the young man's findings. He casually bites into the strip of meat, finishing his meal. Inside the dimly lit cabin, the bearded man sits at the table while the dark-haired woman stands before him. A look of strained intensity crosses her face as the tension in the room rises. The man chews roughly on a toothpick, the sound marking the heavy silence. He looks up with a weary expression, the stick still clamped between his teeth, waiting for the conversation to continue. The woman finally voices her frustration, asking why she is forbidden from letting anyone know she is a mage. As she busies herself packing a wooden crate, the young boy sits quietly at the table behind her. The boy turns his head sharply, his curiosity piqued by the mention of magic. The woman's expression softens into sadness as she considers the weight of the secret she must keep. A vision of a powerful religious order appears, showing robed figures bowing in reverence to a central authority. She continues to speak, a bittersweet smile forming as she explains the reality of their world. The boy looks on with visible nervousness, a drop of sweat running down his cheek as he listens. His gaze turns serious and focused as he begins to understand the danger they are in. The bearded man remains seated with his arms crossed, watching the boy closely from across the room. Suddenly, the boy's eye catches the light, revealing a strange and magical shimmer within the iris. The bearded man rubs his face with his hand, looking exhausted and stressed by the unfolding situation. The older man scratches his neck sheepishly, admitting that the situation feels quite awkward. The young man watches him in silence, a bead of sweat running down his face as he tries to gauge the other's intentions. He stands tall in the room, waiting to see how this interaction will unfold. The bearded man leans forward slightly, seemingly trying to apologize for the earlier tension. He confesses that the sudden meeting took him completely by surprise. To show his good intentions, he extends an open hand toward the young man. With a warm and friendly expression, he offers a formal greeting to start fresh. The young man accepts the gesture without hesitation, and their hands clasp firmly. Standing together in the rustic room, they seal their introduction with a handshake. The tension fully dissipates as a hearty meal is prepared and served. They sit opposite each other at the round table, sharing food under the warm glow of the lamp. The young man looks up with a bright smile, clearly enjoying the meal and the hospitality. The older man relaxes completely, gesturing with his hand as he chats casually. A look of genuine amusement crosses the young man's face as he listens. The bearded man grins broadly in return, happy to share a moment of laughter and camaraderie. A young man with white hair sits quietly at a table, listening to the conversation in the dimly lit room. Across from him, a man gestures with his hands, explaining his point with enthusiasm. The older man stands up abruptly, looming over the table, while the young man simply smiles. A coin is placed on the wooden surface with a distinct tap. The young man rises from his chair, ready to move on. The older man glances back over his shoulder, flashing a confident grin. Outside, the wind blows across a grassy hill that overlooks a large town in the valley. A flock of sheep grazes peacefully in the open field, bleating occasionally. The young shepherd smiles, enjoying the tranquility of the moment. A sheep lifts its head, suddenly alert to the shepherd's presence. He stands tall in the middle of the pasture, holding his wooden staff. His expression is gentle and kind as he watches over the flock. He reaches out to pet one of the animals, stroking its soft wool. A memory surfaces of the older man returning home with a hunted beast, announcing his arrival to a younger version of the boy. Back in the present, the shepherd walks steadily through the herd as the sheep part to let him pass. A young man groans in discomfort, casting a troubled gaze toward the sky. Deep within the woods, the sound of heavy footsteps echoes as a figure walks along a lonely path. The man pauses and glances back over his shoulder, sensing that something about the atmosphere feels strange. He surveys the clearing, noticing broken stumps that suggest a monster has passed through. Standing before a massive tree, he observes a mysterious light radiating from its trunk. Looking down, he discovers a glowing crystal resting quietly on a stone surface. He closes his eyes for a moment, appearing calm as he stands near the artifact. Suddenly, his eyes snap open wide as he senses an immediate and deadly threat. He whips his head around sharply, reacting to a movement behind him. A grotesque, clawed hand slams onto the ground, staring at him with an eye embedded in its flesh. The creature reveals its true form, a nightmarish beast of gnashing teeth and twisted muscle. The massive monster towers over the man, completely dwarfing him in the forest clearing. The man stares up in shock, sweat running down his face as he faces the terrifying entity. Without hesitation, the beast swings its giant claws down to crush him. A violent explosion of force erupts as the attack strikes, shaking the ground beneath them. The veteran warrior looks up with intense focus, declaring his resolve to end the battle. He launches himself high into the sky, soaring above the chaotic battlefield. Twisting his body in midair, he locks his gaze on the target below. He lands swiftly in front of the massive beast, readying his weapon. Crackling yellow lightning gathers in his hand as he charges a powerful spell. He unleashes a devastating beam of energy, blasting forward with immense force. However, his expression shifts to shock as the attack fails to yield the expected result. He stares down as a dark, viscous shadow begins to pool on the ground. Startled, he whips his head around, questioning the sudden appearance of this strange magic. The black substance bubbles ominously beneath his feet, defying the laws of nature. Suddenly, a gigantic claw made of darkness erupts from the earth behind him. The shadow beast strikes violently, overwhelming the warrior's defenses. He grits his teeth in pain as the blow connects, drawing blood. The impact flings him backward, sending him crashing through the air. He hits the ground hard, gasping for breath and staring up in disbelief. A monstrous creature looms menacingly over a lone figure in the forest. The bearded man gasps for breath, sweat running down his face from exhaustion. He grits his teeth, forcing himself to endure the physical strain of the battle. A massive, clawed hand reaches down, threatening to crush everything in its path. The man summons his magical energy, his hand glowing with intense power as he prepares to fight back. He manages a confident smile, remarking that his way of thinking sets him apart from other mages. Wreathed in flames, he stands his ground, ready to unleash his spell against the beast. A younger companion watches silently from the side, observing the confrontation. The mage glances back over his shoulder, acknowledging the presence of his ally. Suddenly, his focus shifts as he notices something unexpected happening on the ground. A small rock begins to levitate, surrounded by a mysterious blue aura. The man's eye widens in shock as he witnesses the sudden display of power. Throughout the clearing, heavy stones are lifted into the air by an unseen force. The young man steps forward with a determined look, revealing that he is the one controlling the floating debris. Standing defiantly between the monster and the mage, the young man declares that he will not allow the creature to proceed. The white-haired mage stands amidst floating debris, a confident smile playing on his lips as energy gathers around him. Beside him, the bearded fighter ignites his fists with roaring flames, taking a sturdy combat stance. A colossal dark monster looms over them, its presence casting a terrifying shadow over the battlefield. Suddenly, a beam of blue energy slashes through the air, illuminating the dark forest. The attack slams into the ground with explosive force, sending shockwaves rippling outward. The fighter's hand glows with an intense, blinding golden light as he prepares to strike. The magical energy swirls around his arm before slowly dissipating into the air. A massive burst of blue magic detonates, engulfing the target in a chaotic sphere of power. The young mage focuses his will through a single finger, straining to control the volatile spell. He realizes with shock that the attack is useless. The monster stands firm, its green core glowing unharmed amidst the energy storm. The fighter shouts in alarm, his face twisted with urgency as he sees their attacks failing. Refusing to give up, the mage thrusts his open palm forward to unleash another wave of power. His eyes shine with a celestial light, reflecting the immense mana he is channeling from within. Flames erupt violently around the beast, but its glowing green eye peers menacingly through the fire. The mage glances back, sweat running down his face as he confronts the terrifying resilience of their enemy. The older warrior freezes, sweat trickling down his face as he realizes the danger is far from over. His jaw tightens and his eyes widen in sheer disbelief at the sudden turn of events. A massive shockwave erupts, shattering the ground and sending debris flying as a figure intercepts the attack. Despite the destruction around him, the white-haired mage remains eerily calm, glancing upward with a faint smile. He skids backward rapidly, his boots carving deep grooves into the earth as he creates distance from the impact zone. Intense magical energy begins to swirl in his open palm, condensing into a volatile sphere of flame. A colossal stone-skinned beast looms from the shadows, but the mage stands his ground, his magic illuminating the darkness. He raises the ball of fire high above his head, his gaze locking onto the monster with unwavering focus. Stomping his foot firmly into the dirt, he anchors his stance to generate maximum power for the strike. With a violent pivot of his body, he unleashes the spell, hurling the blazing projectile forward with all his might. The attack manifests as a searing eye of fire, tearing through the air with terrifying speed. The target is instantly engulfed in a roaring inferno, the flames twisting and consuming the creature's form. The older man screams out, completely stunned by the overwhelming display of power. The young mage stands confident amidst the swirling embers, his hand still outstretched from the cast. A sharp light flashes in his eyes, revealing his intense determination as the battle continues. The veteran warrior pauses, sensing a shift in the air that draws his gaze upward. His expression stiffens as shock takes hold of him. He stares in absolute disbelief at the impossible sight before him. The silver-haired youth stands calm and composed while the massive skeletal beast burns behind him. As the monster's colossal frame collapses into ash, the young man remains the only thing standing. A hand extends, seemingly reaching out through the aftermath of the battle. The young man closes his eyes, taking a deep breath to steady his spirit. Suddenly, a vibrant green energy begins to manifest, swirling around his arm like living flame. The power gathers in his palm, forming a concentrated sphere of magical light. His eye snaps open, glowing with a fierce emerald light that matches the energy. The magic erupts, tracing glowing veins of power across his entire body. He stares wide-eyed as the overwhelming force courses through him. Standing firm, he clenches his fist to test this new strength, leaving the veteran behind him speechless. The young man looks on with a quiet resolve, seemingly changed by the surge of power. The older warrior remains frozen, unable to process the incredible potential he has just witnessed. The young man's gaze sharpens as he focuses intently on the person before him. In the forest, the scarred stranger bows deeply with a hand over his heart, showing unexpected respect. The young man watches the gesture, looking slightly confused and unsure how to respond. Suddenly, the moment is shattered as blood spurts violently from the older man's arm. He clutches the injury tightly, his face twisting in pain as the wound reopens. Later, inside a wooden cabin, the young man brings a tray of medical supplies to treat his guest. He speaks calmly, perhaps asking about the injury or offering reassurance. A sudden realization or sensation strikes him, causing his eyes to snap open in shock. Outside the cabin, the day remains peaceful and quiet, contrasting with the tension inside. With the wound tended to, the two men sit opposite each other at the table with a small box between them. The young man watches the stranger closely, waiting for an explanation. He listens in silence, his expression serious and attentive. The atmosphere in the room grows heavy as their attention focuses on the wooden box. The older man's expression darkens as he begins to recount a grave story. His words paint a terrifying picture of a battlefield engulfed in flames and war. the man begins to speak of his past, revealing the heavy burdens he carries. His young companion listens in silence, absorbing the story. He recounts the memory of his strict master Hartmann and the tragic loss of his wife and son during the war. The recollection brings a moment of deep sorrow to the veteran. The young man watches him, understanding the pain behind the words. Attempting to shift the mood, the man awkwardly praises the youth's skills. The young man remains quiet, sensing the deflection. The veteran stands up and turns to leave the room. The conversation takes place within a fortified town nestled in the valley. It is a world watched over by gods and governed by ancient powers. These forces have long fueled the fires of war and conflict between armies. At the doorway, the man pauses and looks back. The young man meets his gaze steadily. With a warm and parting smile, the veteran offers a silent reassurance. Their weapons remain behind, resting side by side against the wall. The young man stands under the clear sky, offering a gentle smile to his companion. The older man listens attentively, his gaze fixed on the youth. Confusion crosses the young man's face as the conversation takes an unexpected turn. Realizing the awkwardness of the moment, the older man closes his eyes and smiles sheepishly. A vision of a glowing, mystical heart encased in bone burns intensely, representing a profound power. The older man's expression shifts to one of seriousness as he begins to explain the true nature of this power. Overcome with emotion and determination, the young man clenches his fist tightly. The peaceful ground, scattered with leaves and grass, stands in contrast to the tension of the moment. The older man strokes his chin in deep thought, observing the young man's back as he contemplates his next words. A sudden realization strikes the young man, leaving him stunned and sweating slightly. The older man looks down, his face cast in shadow as he prepares to deliver a heavy truth. The young man stares ahead, his eye wide with focus as he absorbs the revelation. A subtle, confident smile forms on the older man's face as he speaks his final point. The two stand together at the entrance of a dark structure, looking out into the light as the doors creak open. A terrifying memory surfaces, showing a dark, armored figure hunched over a bloody victim in the shadows. A harrowing memory of blood and agony flashes violently through his mind. The young man snaps back to the present, standing dazed under the bright sky. He remains frozen in place, struggling to separate the nightmare from reality. His eyes widen in shock as he tries to regain his composure. Glancing back, he spots a formidable figure standing near a grave and swallows hard in nervousness. Anxiety grips him as he stares at the imposing warrior, sweat trickling down his face. The older man begins to smile, breaking the heavy tension between them. A firm hand lands on the young man's shoulder, grounding him in the moment. He looks up at his mentor with a mix of confusion and apprehension. The warrior offers a warm, reassuring grin that instantly dispels the fear. His gaze is gentle, showing care rather than the sternness of a fighter. As they stand together in the open field, the mentor speaks about the instruction to leave the hill. The older man continues his explanation with a friendly and relaxed expression. The young man listens carefully, his surprise softening into realization. He looks at his teacher, the earlier tension replaced by a quiet understanding. The silver-haired young man stands quietly, looking focused. He and the older warrior stand together in the grassy field. The scarred man looks at his companion with a serious expression. The young man turns back to him with a confident smile. The older man smiles back, acknowledging a shared understanding. They linger outside the large wooden farmhouse in the countryside. The scene shifts to the quiet interior of the house. The older man sits down to explain a serious matter. He tells the young man that the ability is not truly a power. Sitting at the round table, he questions if it can be called magic. He raises 3 fingers to emphasize a specific point. The young man listens intently to his mentor's words. The mentor rests his hand on the table and confirms with a yes. He speaks of training while thinking of the region of Ravista. The young man smiles and gestures, appearing ready for the challenge. The silver-haired young man speaks earnestly, his gaze fixed on the person across from him. The rugged, muscular man stands quietly, closing his eyes as if in deep thought or resignation. A metal mug filled with clear water sits still upon the wooden table. The 2 men remain in the rustic cabin, with the older man standing while the younger one stays seated. The young man extends his hand over the mug, causing the air to crackle with energy. Under the influence of his power, the water in the cup begins to boil and bubble violently. The older man watches the display closely as the young man focuses on the task. Sudden flames erupt from the young man's hand, heating the drink with a burst of magical fire. Seeing this, the older man clenches his fist in excitement, a wide grin spreading across his face. The two continue their interaction across the table, the atmosphere now lighter. Outside the window, a curious sheep peeks in, observing the men inside the house. The young man hums thoughtfully, a bead of sweat trickling down his face after the exertion. The older man looks at him with a serious, perhaps questioning expression. Without a word, the young man rises from his chair to leave. He vanishes in an instant, leaving only a swirling trail of dust on the floor as the older man stands alone in the room. The older man pauses for a moment, a look of quiet emotion on his face. The room stands silent and empty, bathed in the soft light of the window. With a swift movement, the white-haired young man prepares to depart. He clenches his fist tightly, steeling his resolve for what lies ahead. As he turns to leave, his companion steps up behind him with a gentle presence. The older man places a hand over his heart, offering a sincere gesture of respect. Outside, a villager shouts in shock, asking if they are really going to leave. The young man stands firm in the street, his heavy pack secured and ready for travel. Another townsperson looks on with concern, stunned by the sudden departure. The two travelers walk away from the village side by side, leaving the settlement behind them. The older companion smiles warmly, telling the youth he is free to do as he pleases. The young man glances back with a faint, confident smile. And so the young man turns his back on the past and looks toward the forest. Burdened by his pack but light in spirit, he walks away to begin his transformation. He disappears into the mist, moving forward on the path he is destined to walk. In a peaceful memory, a young boy walks through green pastures alongside his guardian, enjoying the gentle breeze. The scene shifts to the present, where the wind howls across a desolate and rocky wasteland. A lone traveler makes his way through the canyon, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The young man pauses to adjust his hood, shielding his face from the harsh blowing dust. Suddenly, his journey is interrupted as several cloaked figures appear and block his path. The traveler looks up in confusion, surprised by the sudden ambush in such a remote place. He finds himself completely surrounded by a group of armed men guarding a transport wagon. One of the strangers steps forward aggressively, planting his feet to stop the traveler from moving any further. A thug with a malicious grin looms over him, clearly looking for trouble. The sound of steel rings out as the bandits draw their swords, closing in for the kill. Despite the danger behind him, the traveler remains calm and even offers a confident smile. The leader of the group, a scarred man with an eye patch, steps forward with an arrogant expression. A sharp blade is pressed directly against the traveler's throat, threatening his life. The one-eyed leader glares intensely, scrutinizing the young man who dares to smile at death. The scene changes to a quiet room, where the traveler now sits opposite a bearded man for a serious discussion. A hand conjures a small flame, casually heating a drink with magic. In a quiet room, two men stand opposite each other in a tense silence. Outside, a hooded bandit smiles menacingly, deciding to use the traveler as a target for practice. He arrogantly announces his plan to test his skills on his victim. The traveler's eye sharpens, instantly recognizing the danger. The bandits surround him, laughing and mocking his claim to be a mage. Suddenly, the traveler's hand moves with blurring speed. A powerful burst of wind magic explodes outward, blasting the attackers away. The bandits are tossed helplessly through the air by the violent gale. The traveler remains calm and focused, watching his enemies fly back. The attackers crash onto the sandy ground, struggling to recover from the sudden assault. Without hesitation, the traveler begins to gather moisture from the air. The water droplets instantly freeze, forming a sharp, jagged shard of ice. More deadly crystals materialize, hovering in the air around him. He stands ready for the next phase of combat, controlling the floating ice with ease. A hooded bandit stares with a crazed expression, anticipating the violence to come. The silver-haired traveler moves faster than the eye can follow, slashing through his opponent and sending blood spraying into the air. He stands composed amidst the chaos, his expression calm and focused. The one-eyed bandit falls to his knees, reaching out helplessly while his weapon lies useless on the sand. Refusing to surrender, the remaining gang members roar in fury and charge forward to attack all at once. The traveler stomps his foot firmly onto the ground, bracing himself for a powerful strike. A massive shockwave tears through the area, splitting the earth and blasting the attackers away in an instant. The one-eyed bandit watches in absolute horror, sweat pouring down his face as he witnesses the destruction. The traveler stands silently as the severed remains of the wooden structures crash down behind him. Defeated and terrified, the bandit leader cowers on the ground, staring at the boots of the man who decimated his crew. The traveler looks down at the trembling man, his demeanor remaining cool and detached. His gaze is sharp and unwavering as he observes the fear he has instilled. The bandit leader shivers uncontrollably, completely paralyzed by the overwhelming presence before him. The traveler's expression softens slightly, as if he has noticed something unexpected. The bandit leader continues to stare up, caught between terror and confusion. A terrified bandit stares upward, paralyzed by the magical water sphere hovering above him. The young man's mentor recounts a hard lesson from the past, his expression grave. The silver-haired disciple listens silently, absorbing the weight of the old warrior's words. A sword rests on the table, a cold reminder of the difficult choices a warrior must make. Standing over his fallen enemy, the young man recalls that sparing one villain out of pity could doom 10 innocents. He glances back with a faint, resolved smile, accepting the necessity of his actions. Turning away from the carnage, he begins a solitary journey across the vast desert. The traveler continues his trek under the bright sun, leaving the wasteland behind. His steps come to an abrupt halt, paralyzed by a sight that defies reason. The sweat from physical exertion gives way to a chill of astonishment, as his single eye fixes in disbelief on what appears before him. With a dull thud, the advance is halted at the very edge of the precipice. There, where solid ground ends, only the silence of the abyss waiting below remains. Faced with the vast expanse that unfolds ahead, the weight of his baggage seems insignificant compared to the promise of the horizon. It is a brief moment of respite, where his gaze drifts into the infinite before the solitary march must begin again. A gasp of astonishment escapes him as he realizes the magnitude of what stretches out before him. Surprise lights up his face, transforming uncertainty into a sudden and clear revelation beneath the open sky. The wind sweeps through the heights as the final destination reveals itself, imposing and undeniable, dominating the landscape below. Before the grandeur of the fortress, the realization settles in. The journey has finally brought them to the right place. The murmur of the crowd grows, a restless sound that fills the dry, cracked surroundings. Amid the hurried footsteps of the adults, innocence is swept along by the current, glancing back without understanding the gravity of the moment. The market awakens with the constant hum of voices and footsteps, turning the square into a labyrinth of passers-by. While some simply observe the flow, travelers carry the weight of their journeys, blending into the bustling crowd beneath the daylight. The story begins beneath the towering spires of a grand cathedral that overlooks the city. Down in the busy streets, a white-haired traveler walks through the marketplace, drawing whispers from the crowd. He approaches a fruit stall, eyeing the fresh apples and melons on display. The young man raises a hand to get the merchant's attention, intending to make a purchase. However, the shopkeeper turns to him with a scarred face and a look of distinct annoyance. Instead of serving him, the merchant waves his hand dismissively, shooing the traveler away. He points aggressively away from the stall, refusing to sell any fruit to the young man. Resigned to the rejection, the traveler counts the coins in his hand, checking his remaining funds. He decides to move on and finds a wooden sign marking the entrance to a local pub. Inside the establishment, a blonde waitress greets him with a warm and friendly smile. The young traveler smiles back, relieved to find a more welcoming reception here. The waitress clasps her hands together, seemingly charmed by the new customer. He drops a small pouch of coins into her hand to pay for his request. She accepts the payment, holding the pouch tight as she pays attention to him. The young man's expression turns serious as he prepares to get down to business. The waitress holds up a coin, smiling as she reminds the customer that answers require payment. She tells the traveler standing before her that nothing in this world comes for free. Wooden barrels sit quietly in the corner of the tavern. Now seated, the silver-haired traveler asks a question while holding his mug. The waitress leans against the table, engaging him in conversation. The traveler listens silently, his expression serious and unreadable. The woman looks back at him, her expression shifting to one of curiosity. Their discussion continues in the quiet tavern until they are interrupted. A large, muscular man suddenly looms behind the traveler with a wide grin. He places a heavy hand on the traveler's shoulder, drawing the attention of the room. The intruder laughs and pats the traveler roughly, acting mockingly friendly. Unfazed, the traveler stands up and turns to face the large man. The man's companions smirk in the background, enjoying the intimidation attempt. Instead of fighting, the traveler holds out a small weighted pouch. The large man strokes his chin thoughtfully as he considers the offering. The young man stands in the quiet of the cabin, absorbing the weight of the conversation. Later that night, he lies awake in bed, staring at the ceiling while sleep evades him. A heavy sigh escapes his lips as his mind remains restless with worry. His bag is already packed and waiting, the decision to leave the village weighing on him. Blue energy crackles around his fingers, a reflex of the power he keeps ready for defense. He recalls the journey through the misty wastelands, wondering if it was ever safe to lower his guard. A memory of a brighter, more confident moment under the open sky briefly flashes through his mind. Snapping back to the present, he approaches the door with magic flaring in his hand, prepared for an intruder. He cautiously opens the door just a crack, peering out to identify the visitor. His eyes narrow in sharp focus as he recognizes the person standing outside. The tension breaks as he sees Lena standing there, offering a nervous smile. The magical energy fades as confusion replaces his suspicion. Lena blushes and fidgets with her ribbon, struggling to find the courage to speak. They stand in silence at the threshold, the young man waiting for her explanation. She takes a deliberate step forward, entering his personal space. The woman leans in close, smiling warmly as she tells him that just seeing his face is enough. Her flirtatious words are met with a reaction of complete, statue-like stillness. She freezes, her expression going blank with confusion at the lack of response. A sudden shout of frustration rings out, breaking the atmosphere. The tension is high, visible in the clenched jaw of the angry man. The white-haired traveler stands outside under the open sky, looking somewhat bewildered. He maintains a calm demeanor, though the situation has clearly become awkward. Back inside, the woman stands on the stairs, her face flushed red with a mix of embarrassment and annoyance. Later, the traveler retreats to his room and lies down on the bed, still fully awake. He stares blankly ahead, lost in deep contemplation. Heavy footsteps echo on the wooden stairs as a group of men ascends. Hearing the noise, the young man in bed lets out a faint, amused chuckle. His eyes widen, suddenly sharp and alert to the new presence. The leader of the group, a rugged man with a bandana, wears a confident grin. He is introduced as Midan, a monster hunter. A confident smile forms on his face as he wakes. Lying in bed, the young man stares up at the ceiling, feeling refreshed and ready. He travels into town and arrives at a large building with a notice board outside. Inside, he approaches the counter to get the receptionist's attention. The clerk at the desk looks up and asks the young man what he needs. The man waits patiently for a response from the visitor. The young man's mind briefly flashes back to a scarred man he knows. He remembers sitting in a field with the older man, surrounded by a flock of grazing sheep. In the memory, he sat quietly and listened to what the man had to say. Back in the present, a piece of paper is slid across the wooden counter. The young man picks up the document to examine the details. The paper displays a sketch of a strange three-legged blackbird. The receptionist checks his records while the young man reviews the image. The young man holds the paper, looking satisfied with the information he has received. However, the creature depicted represents a terrifying bloody nightmare of flesh and teeth. The clerk pauses his work, holding his quill with a serious expression. A hand slides a document stamped with the image of a three-legged crow across the desk. The silver-haired young man turns to leave the busy office, while the staff processes his report. The clerk looks up abruptly, his attention caught by the significance of the submission. The lifeless eye of the creature stares blankly into nothingness. The bird lies dead on a white cloth pierced by a single clean wound through its chest. The officials stare down at the carcass in disbelief, sweat forming on their faces. While the men inspect the dead creature on the floor, the young man stands by silently. He watches them with a cold, indifferent gaze, waiting for their assessment. As the young man walks away, the clerk turns back nervously while a colleague rushes off in the background. A pouch of payment is handed over along with an urgent instruction to go and rest. The examiners exclaim in shock that the valuable parts of the bird remain perfectly intact. The clerk's eyes widen as a sudden realization strikes him. He stares intently at the young man's back as the hunter pauses near the exit. The officials are left frozen in fear and awe, realizing the terrifying skill of the person who just left. A young man with silver hair stands quietly, his expression calm and observant as he enters the room. A hearty meal of meat, cheese, and warm soup is laid out on the wooden table. The hostess gestures proudly to the feast, inviting her guest to enjoy the food she has prepared. He begins to eat with great enthusiasm, savoring every bite of the delicious meal. As he chews, his expression softens, and his thoughts seem to drift elsewhere. He recalls a recent memory where he used his mysterious energy to heal a small creature in the wild. Looking at his open palm, he remembers the sensation of the power that flowed through him during that moment. Returning to the present, he sits silently at the table, lost in contemplation. A large man joins the hostess, and they stand together watching their guest. The woman smiles brightly, expressing her happiness that he enjoyed the meal she cooked for the first time in a long while. Beside her, the man wipes sweat from his face, looking tired from his labor, but satisfied. The young man rises from his stool, turning his back to prepare for his departure. Suddenly, a hand reaches out and firmly grabs his arm, halting his movement. He turns to find his path blocked by a group of men wearing unsettling grins. The atmosphere shifts instantly as he stands still, listening intently to the threat behind him. A sudden sharp blow connects, snapping the man's head back violently. The force of the strike sends the attacker stumbling across the tavern floor, unable to regain his balance. Unfazed by the violence, the young man clasps his hands together and politely asks if they have any charity to spare. Ignoring the question, a thug throws a heavy punch directly at the young man's face. The youth moves with fluid speed, dodging the attack and countering in the same breath. Chaos erupts as the attackers are sent crashing into the furniture by the young man's precise movements. He effortlessly stops a swinging chair mid-air with a single open palm. The attacker freezes in terror as the young man places a finger against his forehead. With a simple flick of his finger, he releases a burst of energy that sends his opponent flying backward. A woman watching from the side gasps, her face flushed with shock at the overwhelming display of strength. The brawl ends in total defeat, and the group of thugs lines up to bow deeply in apology. The white-haired young man stands in the doorway, observing their submission with a calm expression. The leader of the group keeps his head lowered, showing deference to the one who easily bested them. He eventually looks up, offering a nervous and respectful smile to the powerful youth. However, his hand clenches tightly at his side, betraying the anger he is struggling to suppress. The young man stands before the rugged stranger, preparing to settle a debt. He holds a small pouch securely in his hand. He extends the pouch toward the man, offering payment for the service provided. The stranger looks at the reward with surprise. With a calm expression, the young man confirms the terms of their agreement. The man, named Midan, smiles broadly and accepts the deal, pleased to trade his knowledge for coin. The information concerns the layout and details of the bustling city nearby. Having finished his business, the young man stands alone in the open field as the wind brushes past him. He reflects on the exchange, satisfied that Midan provided the necessary details about the next city on his route. He recalls the meeting inside the tavern, where he sat listening while Midan stood across the table sharing what he knew. Midan had been confident and eager to talk, smiling as he delivered the intelligence. Now the young man moves with purpose, dashing rapidly through the forest clearing. He pauses to inspect a tree trunk, running his hand over deep jagged claw marks scarred into the wood. Standing in the silent woods, he senses that violence has occurred here recently. His suspicion is confirmed when he finds a bloody corpse slumped against the base of a tree. The dead man's face is frozen in a mask of terror, splattered with blood from a brutal attack. The young man looks down at the gruesome scene, his expression cold and calculating as he assesses the situation. Coins lie scattered in a pool of blood beside a motionless hand. The white-haired man kneels next to a dying survivor who tries desperately to speak. Suddenly, a presence nearby catches the young man's attention. The survivor groans in agony, unable to convey his message. With a final cough of blood, he succumbs to his injuries. The sickening sound of chewing echoes from the shadows. A monstrous rabbit sits atop a fresh corpse, feasting on the remains. The young man watches in shock as the beast consumes its prey. The creature reveals its blood-stained teeth and glowing red eyes. The man turns sharply, preparing for the predator's next move. A massive impact shakes the forest as the beast attacks. The monster lunges through the air with terrifying speed. The man grits his teeth, barely reacting in time to the assault. The creature lands heavily, digging its claws into the earth. A blade slices through the air, countering the beast with a swift strike. A hand grips the weapon tightly, swinging it with sudden force. The young warrior twists his body, channeling power into his technique. A crescent of blue energy tears through the air, flying straight toward the distant monster. The horned rabbit stands still, unaware of the attack approaching from behind. Sensing danger at the last second, the creature leaps frantically to dodge the energy wave. The warrior watches intently, his gaze locked on the beast's evasion. The monster's heavy paws skid across the dirt as it struggles to regain its footing. It suddenly launches itself high into the air, looming over its opponent. A blood-red eye glares down, filled with predatory rage. But the creature strikes nothing but air, confused by the warrior's sudden disappearance. The beast lands and spins around, frantically searching for the enemy it lost sight of. The warrior reappears from the blind spot, descending with his blade ready. A sharp cut slices deep into the monster's neck, spraying blood. The fighter lands gracefully on the ground while the wounded beast stumbles away. He immediately dashes into the forest shadows, moving too fast to be tracked. A sudden burst of energy strikes a target with explosive force. The white beast is caught directly in the blast, unable to evade the attack. The impact sends the creature flying helplessly through the air. It crashes into the forest, leaving a trail of smoke rising from the trees. The monster lies motionless on the ground, completely incapacitated by the fall. Blood drips steadily from its body, staining the earth beneath. Defeated, the creature sprawls in a growing pool of its own blood. A figure steps out from the shadows, approaching the fallen beast. A man in a white coat stands over the carcass, surveying his work. He reaches out his hand toward the dead creature. Suddenly, a strange green aura flares up around him. Glowing veins spread across his face, startling him with their intensity. His attention shifts sharply as he notices something out of place. Looking past the monster, he spots a wounded person slumped against a tree and identifies him as a mage. He stares at the stranger, processing this unexpected discovery. A single tear tracks through the blood on a battered face, revealing deep sorrow. The blonde warrior turns his scarred and bloodied visage, bearing the heavy toll of battle. A memory surfaces of that same friend, smiling and unburdened in happier times. In the past, the two companions sat together at a tavern table, engaged in quiet conversation. The silver-haired young man listens intently, absorbing his friend's words. With a relaxed demeanor, the blonde warrior waits for an answer to his question. Deep in thought, the young man considers his future with a contemplative expression. His resolve hardens as he finally voices the decision he has reached. Standing before 3 stone graves, he pays his solemn respects to the fallen. A faint, determined smile touches his lips as he finds closure. Turning away from the burial mounds, he leaves the past behind him. He walks through a village, moving forward with a new sense of purpose. Suddenly he looks up, his eyes widening in amazement at the sight ahead. A magnificent estate with towering blue spires sprawls out grandly before him. Shouldering his pack, he joins the long line of travelers at the city gate, surprised by the sheer number of people trying to enter. Guards stand vigilant at their posts, watching over the street as people pass by. A white-haired traveler carrying a heavy backpack approaches the checkpoint. He suddenly stops in his tracks, reacting to a presence ahead. One of the guards points an accusing finger, his expression full of shock and anger. The traveler looks confused as the hooded figure looms over him. This confrontation takes place beneath a massive vine-covered tower that dominates the landscape. The entrance to the tower is sealed by grand blue doors and protected by armed sentries. A guard stares down with a stern, disbelief-filled gaze. The traveler looks down, questioning the hostility directed at him. Blocking the path with an outstretched hand, the guard calls the traveler a madman for trying to enter. Suddenly, a hand charges with volatile red energy, preparing to strike. A dark power manifests, and a glowing red eye pierces through the shadows with killing intent. The energy surges violently around the hand, ready to unleash a devastating attack on the terrified guard. The moment passes instantly, leaving the guard shouting in shock while the traveler stands silently. The scene shifts as the young man exhales a heavy breath, looking exhausted and sweaty. The young man stands shirtless and confused as the maids bustle around him to assist. The attendants look on with flushed cheeks, clearly flustered by his presence. This transformation takes place within the walls of a magnificent and sprawling estate. One maid gasps softly, her eyes widening in sheer admiration. She quickly clamps her hands over her mouth to stifle her reaction. Now fully dressed in a sharp uniform, the man ties back his long silver hair. The staff bows nervously, trembling slightly as he prepares to move on. He stands tall and refined, his appearance completely changed from before. As he walks forward with confident steps, someone with pink hair watches his approach. The girl teases him, asking if he is the same guest who arrived looking like a beggar. He turns his head, acknowledging the sudden remark with a calm expression. She smiles with amusement, clearly enjoying the contrast in his appearance. With a playful gesture, she raises a finger to emphasize her point. The man remains silent, looking back at her with mild confusion. She hums thoughtfully, observing him with a mischievous grin. A knowing smile curls on the woman's lips as she hides her amusement behind a gloved hand. Suddenly, a massive pillar of blinding light crashes down into the grand hall, shaking the very foundation of the room. The intense energy surges violently, reflecting in the wide eyes of the red-haired woman as she watches the spectacle. Far from being afraid, she grins with manic excitement, clearly delighting in the overwhelming power unleashed before her. In stark contrast, the silver-haired man stands frozen in shock, sweat running down his face as he stares in disbelief at the chaos.